So another little housekeeping thing. Obviously in this forum I'm not able to present PowerPoint slides right now in this great open air setting. So I'm just going to be talking from some notes. But I do have a few printed pictures that I'm going to hand around for you guys to look at. So let me quickly describe the 4 pictures I'm going to hand out. One is an image of the courthouse, now our town hall, from 1870. And you'll see in the foreground the town pump. So that was a really important utility for a couple centuries of this town's history. We have to remember that Main Street was part of the Boston-New York Post Road, so all the major colonial traffic was coming through our Main Street between the colonies, and naturally you had to water your horse. So the town trough, the town pump right in front of the courthouse was a really important utility in the center of the town. It was also really important because it was used for firefighting. So whenever a fire would break out in the village, which was unfortunately frequently back in those days, all the residents would line up in a line starting from the trough to the location of the fire, and they do the bucket brigade thing from the trough. Oh, somebody's pumping that town pump frantically. So it was a very important part of the town, and for a long time it was a wooden trough, but in 1866 the town installed a stone trough. And the reason I'm talking about all this is because we don't know why, but that trough is here on this property now. So when Danielle gives a tour, you're going to see it right over here on the driveway, and it's a very historic part of our town. So I wanted to make sure you guys take a look at that on your way through on Danielle's tour. So there's a picture of the town trough. Second picture is an engraving of the prophet that I'm going to be talking about today. The third picture is a painting of the dark day of 1780. And I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that event in history, but it was a big deal in New England, and it made the prophet famous. So I'm going to be talking about the dark day of 1780. I also have, as my last picture, a map of a section of western New York where the prophet built a utopian colony. So you can see where that was located on this map. So I'm going to hand that around and just take your time, just pass it around as I talk here. And there you go. So a few pictures. All right, so to get started, I want to set the scene a little bit. Imagine for a moment that we are in the middle of the 8-year-long Revolutionary War. First of all, I'm always amazed. We have to remember the Revolutionary War is 8 years long, so a lot of things happened during the Revolutionary War. But the prophet lived during that period and was preaching during that period. So imagine it's during the Revolutionary War. We are gathered on this property, probably in an afternoon just like this. A crowd like this, although I hate to say it, she probably had a much bigger audience. But it was a crowd like this gathered right here. Who knows? Maybe on this spot. We don't know exactly where. But I'm not speaking, but it's a genderless prophet known as the public universal friend. So let me tell you a little bit about this character. Very interesting personality. So the prophet began life as a woman named Jemima Wilkinson. She was born in Cumberland, Rhode Island in 1752. And at the age of 24, she became very ill and lost consciousness. She was unconscious for days. And when she regained consciousness, she claimed that she had died and that she had been reanimated, brought back to life by God with a new spirit and a new identity. And henceforth, she said she should be known as the public universal friend. And she declared herself to be, at that point, genderless. And she wanted to be known only as the friend. So people could refer to her as the friend. They were not allowed to use a gender pronoun, which is amazing when you consider that was 250 years ago what our society is talking about now. 250 years ago, this person said, I will not do not use a gender pronoun. So out of respect, I'll try to refer to Jemima as the friend, but it's hard for me to do sometimes, but I'll try. So the friend began preaching, and apparently the sermons were very arresting because the friend's message was all about the second coming of Christ. And the friend said the second coming of Christ was very imminent, like it was about to happen. And that's the message she had received when she was reanimated as an oracle. And apparently the friend's oratory style was very gripping. She was very arresting. The friend had a very commanding voice. The friend was also arresting because the friend had a very androgynous attire. So the friend would wear a long clerical robe and would wear a cravat, which was a style of men at the time. You can see that in the picture. But the friend had a cravat. So a very androgynous look that was very surprising for the times. So the friend began traveling all around Rhode Island, giving sermons at open-air venues like this. And more people got very intrigued by this very interesting character. Well, the fervor got really exciting in the year 1780. So at the very beginning of that year, the friend predicted that the second coming of Christ would happen on April 1st of that year. So that would be, the friend declared that to be the beginning of the biblical millennium, which, if anyone knows anything about biblical history, that's the beginning of Christ's 1,000-year reign after his second coming. So the friend declared that was going to happen on April 1st. So everybody was in big anticipation of that moment. Well, April came and went without anything otherworldly or exciting happening. But in May, something incredibly strange happened here in that painting, The Dark Day of 1780. So at mid-morning on May 19th, all of a sudden a shroud of darkness started to cover the sky. There was an inky blackness, gloom throughout the day. Unlike an eclipse, where it would get light again, it stayed darker and darker and darker all day. In fact, by noon, people here in East Greenwich were lighting candles, or all across New England lighting candles in their homes at noontime. It was that dark. And that night, people in New England said it was the darkest they'd ever experienced the world. It was absolutely pitch black that night. And so, for those who had heard the friend, and heard the friend's premonition, they were certain that this was evidence that the biblical millennium had begun, as the friend had predicted. So that gave a tremendous energy to the movement behind the friend. As a side note, the cause of the dark day was not discovered until 200 years later, and it was something we know very well now. It was a Canadian wildfire that caused it. So the reason I'm talking about the friend today is because the friend had a very, very deep connection to East Greenwich. So it's quite amazing. We know that the friend preached at several locations around town, and we know this was one of them. And while preaching at this farm right here, the friend made another prophecy that came true. So in the middle of the friend's sermon here, perhaps standing right here, the friend suddenly paused for 2 or 3 minutes. And I won't do that for you because that's a really long time. But the friend then pronounced, "It is made known to me and handed down from the Father of mercies from above, that there is someone within the sound of my voice that will not live to see the light of another day."
Oh my.
So that night, the residents of that farm were walking through this property, and they were walking past one of these outbuildings, can't be sure which one, but there was an elderly man boarding in one of these outbuildings. As they walked past, they heard groaning, and sure enough, they went inside, and there was a man dying. So, as a side note, no judgment on my part, but the friend had many detractors historically during that period, and some of the detractors alleged that the friend used poison to make the prediction come true. We don't know. So because of that sermon and the prediction coming true here, the people of East Greenwich were really fervent about the friend and got really kind of behind the movement. And this was kind of the friend's largest group of followers was here in East Greenwich. One of the biggest supporters was a man named George Spencer, who lived at Fry's Hamlet on Route 2. So for Kathy and Cynthia, I imagine George Spencer was related to you somehow. I don't know, you have to go back and look through, but every Spencer is. So somehow the Spencer, it maybe, I was thinking, Kathy, it could be they lived in your house. I know he lived along that part.
They lived on the east side.
On the east side.
Yeah, and
yeah.
Could have been one of those houses.
Could have been one of those houses. So I know that actually
Now I have something to look
there
up.
is a
You're
map
giving
that
me
shows
homework.
George Spencer's home, and it could be yeah, definitely one of your properties.
Check
So.
it out.
So very interestingly, he was so devoted that the residents of East Greenwich called him Jemima's George. That's how he was known, as Jemima's George. So he was evidence of, there were many, many dedicated followers of the friend here. So dedicated were the East Greenwich followers of the friend that they built a meeting house for the friend here in East Greenwich on Route 2, right across from where Bostitch is now. So if everyone knows where the Bostitch factory is on Route 2, right across from there, where there was a meeting house. And it was actually the first of many, many meeting houses that were built for the friend all across New England. So there are many meeting houses, but the first was actually here in East Greenwich. So it was unfortunately raised sometime in the 1800s, so we don't know what that looked like, but it was understood it had been very plain and modest, but sometime in the 1800s it was taken down. Do you guys know anything more about what?
Only we grew up hearing about the Jemima Wilkinson meeting house lot. That's how my father always referred to it, and that it was basically where the dairy is, or the lot next door. Well,
that's right. Yeah, that's what I understand as well. Yeah.
But we've grown up hearing about it.
Hearing about the friend's meeting house. Yeah. So pretty amazing. So another. What's
There
that?
was that Friends meeting house on the corner.
That was
Spring and
at the time the Quaker movement was also known as the Society of Friends, so they were known as Friends as well. I think those were Quakers at that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, this is different?
This is different.
Because
This
they're
is-
saying Friends and...
No.
Yeah, no, she-
Yeah, no, exactly.
She
Yes,
was a
yes.
Quaker,
For those
not
of you who know the
Friends.
Quaker history, Jemima was a
She was
Quaker.
born a Quaker, right.
She was born a Quaker, and then when she started her own movement, she was no longer affiliated, and the Quakers actually shunned her because they were not part of. She was not part of their society
Hers was like
anymore.
a cult or
Yeah.
something.
Hers was really kind of, you could
Yeah.
probably in our modern day, you would have called it more of that kind of thing. But that's the name kind of does have that Quaker origin to your
Right.
point. But she was not. The Friend was not Quaker. So where do I want to go? I want to talk about the fact that the other fascinating thing for East Greenwich is that first meeting house, when it was established in East Greenwich here, at that time, it was the first time that the followers of the Friend decided we really want to be a religious community now. We're going to call ourselves the Universal Friends. So they named themselves, they actually kind of developed a charter, and that happened when the East Greenwich meeting house was created. So the amazing thing about that is, recall this all happened right after the Revolutionary Wars just ended. So here in Little East Greenwich, the very first religious community in America was formed here in East Greenwich. So pretty amazing little piece of history for us that happened here. So a little bit now about that utopian colony I described. In the 1780s, the Friend extended the preaching mission further and further to New York and then to Pennsylvania, where the Friend actually developed a big contingent of followers in Pennsylvania as well. But controversy started following the Friend because more and more of these Friends followers were getting more fervent, and some of them started to suggest that the Friend was the Messiah. And for, this is a very Christian nation at that point. Many of the people at that point were like, this has gone too far. There's no way we can consider this person to be the Messiah. So that generated a lot of controversy around the Friend. So the Friend at that point decided to avoid it. I want to create a utopian colony in the wilderness. So in 1788, 25 of the Friend's followers founded a new town in western New York called Jerusalem. And by 1790, 260 people were living with the Friend at this colony in western New York. Many of those people were from East Greenwich. So, and there was actually a lot of drama. I don't know if you've ever heard this in your family stories, but there was actually quite a bit of drama written in the town's history about the families leaving here, because the Friend declared that there would be no married couples in the colony, and therefore many people left their spouses and their children to join the Friend in western New York. So it was a very difficult time. I've heard about. I don't know if you've heard those legends too. Yeah. So. End of the story is that 20 years after the founding of the New York colony, the Friend died, and by the 1860s, the movement had fully dissolved. But it should be noted, and we did know this when Martha McPartland wrote her book in 1960, that many descendants of East Greenwich remained there. Of course, they built families, they'd had their whole lives in western New York. So likely still to this day, there are many descendants of East Greenwich people living in western New York because of the Prophet. One other legacy is that the village, you can see on the map there, the village next to Jerusalem, bless you, Joe, the village next to Jerusalem is called Penn and that was named because all the founders were transplants from Pennsylvania and Yankees, and those Yankees were people from East Greenwich. So that's the story of the Prophet. I think it's a pretty remarkable piece of East Greenwich history, and I'm delighted to have shared it, and thank you guys for coming up for that. And I can try to answer any questions that may come up, but I don't know. Yeah?
Is there any information on her family that she left behind in Cumberland?
I don't have a lot in terms of what they were about. I'm trying to think what they were called. There's a great book about her called The Pioneer Prophetess. It's at the library. It's also available online, and it would have those details that I read the book a while ago, so I've forgotten that. But yeah.
Why the no married people? What was the theory there?
Yeah, I can't try and get into the head there, but you have to kind of, there's a lot of psychology we could be thinking about there, maybe. Yeah, it probably ties to the genderless nature of things for her, or for Jemima.
What was the Friend's message other than those, couple of prophecies? What were they advocating for?
the friend was all about trying to get people to prepare for like Christ is coming now kind of
No,
thing.
that's
And-
what was the whole deal.
yeah. So that was the whole thing. And as those prophecies were coming true, and she was the friend was kind of really projecting, as I have this message, you know, it's coming down. That's why I'm able to see things that you people can't see because I've been told. Yeah.
So was this a money-making scheme?
I don't believe so. I don't believe there was any money. Certainly, the friend, you know, depending again, I'm trying to avoid judgment in terms of what the friend might have been about, but you know, certainly the friend had a lot of celebrity. The friend, whenever the friend would travel on a horse with a blue velvet saddle and white reins, and then the friend's followers would be in 2 columns behind. So certainly, at some point, you know, it became a real power. There was a lot of power and glory, you know, associated with it. So maybe, you know, maybe more than money was that kind of thing. Yeah, Michelle. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, how did the friend come to be standing right here at Bittersweet Farm? And is there some parallel between her preachings and a current day philosophy or church? Or were we just calling it a cult? There was no like evangelical movement that sprang from her, or it, they.
Yeah. The second topic is tough for me. I don't know. I do think, more to Cynthia's point, I think it was an isolated kind of religious phenomenon for a while that has not had any kind of current, no relevance to current times. I also, unfortunately, don't know. Obviously, the person who lived here and owned this farm, we don't know. I don't know. Maybe Danielle knows some of the history of the people. You wouldn't know the connection, but I don't even know who lived in this farm. I know the Eldridge family did for a while, but they were more recent. I don't know who was in this farm, but obviously they were followers. So they must have been followers and welcomed the friends onto the property. Yeah, Michelle.
So it sounds like when the friend passed, the whole thing dissolved?
Yeah, it lasted for, I think it was about 40 years that the followers continued to stay there at where the colony was, but then by about 2 generations, then it was gone. Yeah.
Did they continue with an expectation of the end of the world?
They did, yeah. That was still the core belief of that group. They really believed it's happening any moment. You know, we're standing here waiting, kind of thing. Yeah.
Might. There's a chance.
Yeah, right. Absolutely, Ken. Absolutely a chance. That could be true. So, all right, Danielle, can I hand it over to you maybe to thank you guys again so much. Appreciate the engagement.